if you've got any ill feelings towards Bill Gates but are concerned about expressing them, have a chat with Vandana Shiva. She'll help you get it off your chest.
Just by chance, I was reading the rubbish in Bill Gates' new book.
1 star. You asked, we listened. You wanted more information on Bill Gates. You wanted an interview with Vandana Shiva. She came on my podcast, Under the Skin. In this video, we use information we got from Vandana Shiva in Under the Skin and from the activist and professor Nick Estes, a citizen of the Lower Brule Sioux tribe. He's written an article about Bill Gates and Bill Gates' dizzying and worrying proprietorship of more land than, I don't know, I think anyone. Let's get into the details.
Bill Gates has been purchasing agricultural land for years, building a massive portfolio of farmland in 18 states.
Just in case you don't know, this is from Nick Estes' article. Bill Gates is the largest private owner of farmland in the US. A 2018 purchase of 14,500 acres of prime eastern Washington farmland, which is traditional Yakima territory, for $171 million, helped him get that title. Sometimes when I do like a bit of work in America, right, or in Australia, sometimes you do these things where you go, I honour the traditional people of this land. Well, if you do honour the traditional people of this land, stop fucking nicking their land and turning it into a monocultural desert. In total, Bill Gates owns approximately 242,000 acres of farmland with assets totaling more than $690 million. To put that in perspective, says Estes, that's nearly the size of Hong Kong and twice the acreage of the Lower Brule Sioux tribe, where I'm an enrolled member. A white man owns more farmland than my entire native nation. Now, I mean, what's interesting here is the subject of colonialism and colonization comes up again. It's something we don't think of seriously that much unless we're from a community directly affected or we're considering reparations or the formation of new world countries like America, Australia, etc. Not a heavy diss to you guys that are out there just living your lives, just a little bit of history. One of the things I enjoyed about talking to Vandana Shiva is she's academic, she's activist, she's leader, she's a woman, she's an elder, and from this position of authority, she floored me with her understanding of what is happening at the hands of Bill Gates and other techno big biz giants and the way that they are colonizing agriculture, seeds and reality. She also reiterated a fascinating point that you cannot accumulate massive wealth without a deficit. Whenever you see huge wealth, it indicates a deficit. Even on a personal level, for me to be able to have this phone and that laptop, it means other people have had to suffer. So in my admittedly small fry way, I'm contributing to this problem. So I can change myself and I want to change myself, but surely the bigger problem is where it's happening on a global scale at the behest and will of enormously powerful individuals with the freight of great organizations behind them. Thank God for voices like Vandana's and Nick Estes'.
Over these 50 years, I've just said, what is it, the little service I can do, Mother Earth? And I find the little piece I can do, and amazing things happen. Whereas when you come with the colonizing idea, even on many of our environmental friends have that colonizing idea, or how can I fix the earth? Or how can I fix the farmers? How can I do farming without farmers? And how can I go one step beyond, have food without farms? You know, this is colonization because it is saying, I'm not part of the earth. You know, in the great chain of being, I'm not the one little link, but rather I'm above it. Even environmentally, I'm the master. And Russell, I think you'll have to do a lot of work in the next few years because they're going to do a lot of colonization in the name of sustainability.
A lot of the old colonization and sustainability, and much of the burden falls on me. That's, of course, from my Luminary original podcast, Under the Skin. Nick Estes continues, the United States is defined by the excesses of its ruling class, but why do a handful of people own so much land? Land is power, land is wealth. The relationship to land, who owns it, who works it and who cares for it reflects obscene levels of inequality and legacies of colonialism in the United States and also around the world. Great to hear these two powerful and educated voices speaking in collaboration and collusion about an issue that affects all of us, even those of us like me, that are from Western democracies, that are white, that to a significant degree enjoy the privileges of this colonial legacy, even though of course I'm not an instigator of it, I'm just a byproduct, I'm just in the flow of that power. And if those of us that are in that position start to awaken and consider different possibilities, what wonderful new alliances we may be able to form. But of course, it's not Bill Gates on his own. There are other billionaire moguls out there. The billionaire media mogul Ted Turner epitomises these disparities. The disparities to which Nick Estes is referring is wealth accumulation always goes hand in hand with exploitation and dispossession. The 1862 Homestead Act opened up 270 million acres of indigenous territory, which amounts to 10% of US land. Turner owns 2 million acres and has the world's largest privately owned buffalo herd. It seems so mental to have a privately owned buffalo herd. I suppose I've got a cat who's recently had kittens, but nonetheless, the buffalo is sacred. They're sacred to my people, says Nick Estes. They were nearly hunted to extinction by settlers. Look, just because we nearly hunted them to extinction, that don't mean we shouldn't be their custodians. It does! They're preserved on 200,000 acres of Turner's ranch land, land that was once guaranteed by the US government to be a permanent home for Lakota people. The old promises have been reneged on. This is interesting how this relates to the kind of pledges and promises that are made around big tech, big data, ID passports, etc. Like, it's interesting, isn't it? The first people that get exploited are the serfs. Then through colonisation, you exploit all of the people that are in the newly discovered territories. And then you just see how you can sustain an elite by exploiting whoever else, really. And of course, the land itself. And to Vandana Shiva's point there, the attitude of regarding the world as a resource, as something that exists there for us to use, is screwing us up psychologically. Even if you don't care about divinity and the sacred, look at our evolution. For hundreds of thousands of years, we evolved harmoniously, necessarily with the land, and through technology, medicine, and all sorts of advancements, we can now have a more comfortable lifestyle. But isn't it clear to you we've taken that shit a bit too far? Isn't it clear to you that we have to rediscover arcane wisdom? It's no coincidence, is it, that indigenous people are more protective of the land, more respectful of the land? I'm not falling into, I hope, that trap of, oh God, it's so wonderful, the indigenous people, they're so nice, aren't they? I'm sure there's complexities. Human beings are human beings. We all cast shadows in this world. But the fact is that we're living in a chronically imbalanced culture that needs redressing. And could there be any clearer symbol of imbalance than very powerful tech moguls, media billionaires owning hundreds of thousands of acres of land?
I normally don't read rubbish, but when they want to be rulers through rubbish, I read it.
Now, tell us what you really think about Bill Gates.
He has put the Indian plow that has existed for 10,000 years and says, this primitive technology must go. I call this as the future technology of a partnership between our bodies, the body of the earth, and the body of the animals, realizing that we are not masters, but we are there to serve.
I hope I'm not being reductive. Perhaps in my own life, there's been times where I've been very, very excessive in my use of drugs, in my concupiscence. And as I've grown and become a man, I recognise that whilst they may not have been morally or ethically wrong, these behaviours certainly were not in the service of a higher good. So it's possible perhaps at a cultural level to say, like, well, we've created all this technology, but possibly we could rein it in a little bit and particularly be vigilant as to where it's just operating in the service of elites, where it's become not about the technology itself as a tool, but about commercial imperatives that have allowed it to become dreadfully imbalanced. I'm interested in the world that Nick Estes is describing, that Vandana Shiva is illuminating, a world where we recognise we have technology and the advantage it provides us with, but we eliminate the warping bias that is inflected upon it when it is in the concentrated hands of people with very clear objectives. Estes continues, the gun and the whip may not accompany land acquisitions this time round, talking about American farmland, but billionaire class assertions that they are the philosopher kings and climate conscious investors who know better than the original caretakers are little more than ruses for what amounts to a 21st century land grab with big payouts in a for-profit economy seeking green solutions. So these two voices are very much in alliance. We're all aware of economic disparity, but here are some other forms of inequality that are perhaps concealed within the commercial and economic matrix within which we are all inveigled. The world's richest 1% emit double the carbon of the poorest 50%. One of the things that viscerally hits, I know, because I read your comments, is when you say, hold on, these dudes are after Davos to talk about solutions in private jets. Now, you know, like I said myself, I own a phone. I'm benefiting from cheaply available technological products. But there is a difference when scale of this magnitude is introduced. There is a requirement for a kind of ethical purity. There is a requirement for regulation. There is a requirement for control. You can't place the ecological future, which is the sole future of our planet, in the hands of people who have very clearly defined interests, which you can observe by the nature of their power. What is Bill Gates' power? Economic power, brought about through, yes, ingenuity, but primarily through commerce. And you can't create that kind of wealth without exploitation. And as Vandana Shiva and Nick Estes explain, this is another form of colonization, less evident to us with our eyes and understanding these days, just as it was less evident to ordinary people in England, Portugal, France, what was going on in what was called the New World. People weren't thinking, hang on a minute, those are just normal folk like us, aren't they, in their own countries? I'm sure some people were, but the information was, as it is now, controlled by elites that have the agenda of the elites.
And I think this is happening, Russell, because of us arrogance that we have created such immunity for ourselves. We've destroyed every international law. We've destroyed all democracy. We have locked people into fear. No one can hold us to account. I mean, look at the debate right now on the GMO question in Europe, where we created laws on GMO regulation and they want to knock it down. And Bill Gates, again, is financing the lobbies for that deregulation. So there is an arrogance that I can't be touched. And our dear billionaires are the new Columbuses. And for some reason, they've chosen Bill Gates to be the face of this new colonization. And just as at that time of colonization, the destruction of our lives, our cultures, our freedoms, our identities, our land was defined as a civilizing mission of the barbarians. There's a new barbarian definition being put on ordinary human beings so that the new civilizing mission of takeover can happen.
Like wealth, land ownership is becoming concentrated in fewer and fewer hands, resulting in a great push for monocultures and more intensive industrial farming techniques to generate greater returns. 1% of the world's farms control 70% of the world's farmlands. The simple fact is that people that have a historical, or one could argue spiritual, connection to land are better custodians than people that have economic imperatives. It kind of stands to reason that materialistic values tend to lead to extraction, and spiritual values lead to connection. Land still managed by indigenous people worldwide protect and sustain 80% of the world's biodiversity, says Estes. Practices anathema to industrial agriculture. If you're not looking at the land solely in terms of what it can do for you, how it can be converted into profit, then of course your entire attitude and outlook is different and more commensurate with the principles of harmony between the land and the people or beings that live on it.
The colonizer sat with paper and said, here's a map. And they said, we came with a sword in one hand and a yardstick in the other to make maps to colonize the land. The new maps are digital maps of life on Earth. And if you look at three simple things these days, Bill Gates and his digitalization of life, the Great Reset, not to be ignored. And now there's a whole new economics of biodiversity, which is all about financializing biodiversity and putting biodiversity on portfolios of asset managers. And they haven't got it yet. The greed and chasing money has destroyed this planet. It created colonialism, and they're putting it as the savior. So we have to be present everywhere to define, protect our seeds, to defend our food. You know, food will be the next colonization with fake food.
Yeah, but who's involved in fake food though?
What's called artificial meat, which I invested in.
So we've got to both be civil disobedient for society and the planet, wherever we are, in whatever way we can, while standing together as one humanity with one home, this beautiful earth.
So there you are. Does it not make you think that perhaps this is a time to reconfigure our political values, to cast aside old ideas of division, to awaken personally, and to look for new alliances, not new differences. These important voices, Nick Estes there from America, Vandana Shiva from India, are bestowing upon us the necessary wisdom we will require if we are to face and surmount these new challenges from these new giants. And it don't need to be personal, it don't need to be hateful, but what we are facing, whether or not we are a member of Indian culture or American culture or British culture, wherever we find ourselves in the world, the powerful are becoming so powerful. Seeds are being mapped, copyrighted and controlled. Faces are being mapped, copyrighted, controlled. Our power is being eroded, harnessed, taken away from us. I sense the only way to get out of this is to go within yourself, find new connections to who you are. Out of yourself, find new connections with other people. Query your values, query the things that tether you to this planet. Ask yourself deeply what you want from the world, what kind of culture you want to participate in. Look for mentors and teachers and people you can trust, people with comparable ideas and incentives to you. Try to look beyond the superficial differences. Try to look beyond disdain, cynicism and skepticism about the people that you live among and live with, because I think new alliances might be more necessary now than ever. If you like this video, give it the old thumbs up. Nothing makes me feel more spiritually enriched than seeing that, a picture of that with a big number next to it. If you've got any comments, stick a comment in the comments, ask us questions, I get involved. And by the way, I am Russ Brand. People go, you're not Russ Brand. I am that. I'm on a different phone. I don't do all this. Do you think I upload these videos? Do you think I edit this? Can you imagine me in an edit going, oh no, that's cut in there? I'm not like that. I'm like this, and it's okay for me to collaborate with other people. So yeah, I am Russ Brand on this little beauty of a phone. So get your comments in there, get over to my mailing list and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this conversation, it's a Luminary original. That's my podcast. You have to pay for it. It's like $2.99 a month for an annual thing. If that's too much for you, no problem, man. Take the stuff we got for free. Peace.